Hey guys, it's Rodney, and welcome back for another garden tour. So although we've had a lot of really great success over the last couple of weeks, and we've seen a lot of really great growth on things, it is June now, and it is Central Texas, and it is really hot. So we are also seeing a lot of stress. So let's go check out the good and the bad. First stop is the little baby Hoya we've talked about before, but she's finally got a bud. First time ever that this little cutting's gonna bloom. So I'm thrilled about that, but as you can see, and based on her foliage, she is feeling a little stressed. We've got to get her some food, some fertilizer, some nitrogen, it looks like, possibly some iron, and then some other goodies. Why is that so stuck? But there's 2 blooms. That's so exciting. We've also talked a lot about the root beer plant, one of my favorite plants in the yard, and I wasn't sure how successful it was going to be this year, but they did finally start kicking in once we got more of a consistent warm evening. A couple of them are looking stunning. Last month we also added the caladium, and those guys are growing in pretty well. This is the one with the kind of the bright white leaves, and of course, because I planted something new, a new sedge has like emerged from underneath it, but you know what? Survival of the fittest around here. We also added in a syngonium into this little coconut fiber planter here, so we'll see how well she does. It is just a cutting that we rooted in water. It did have a little bit of stress coming out into soil, but she's hanging in there, she's trying. Our asparagus fern in our Wally pocket is also exploding. It's kind of growing over the little cat ramp to the roof that we have here. If you didn't know, we have a cat ramp at our house, because our cats like to hang out on the roof, and then they just jump down like maniacs. So we built them a ramp. But now the asparagus fern is growing over top of it. But she's loving life. She looks great. The pink princess is also finally putting on some new growth. She's kind of been neglected in this poor little hanging basket over here. If you're too needy, you don't get a lot of attention around here. But she is doing much better. We did do some chopping and are doing some rooting as well. But some of the new growth is coming out really nice. That leaf is probably going to get aborted because there is no green to it. That is a risk you run with some of these guys. But you can see it's got some really gnarly growth. So I think by the end of summer, maybe by next month's video, probably the following month, we are going to actually chop this up quite a bit more. It's going to be basically a mother plant in here, but she's doing her best. The root beer plants in the shower, of course, are thriving right now with the warm days and warm evenings, but also they get the regular watering from the outdoor shower. The outdoor gym also finally got its artificial turf fully installed, so it's looking a little bit nicer over here. Never mind the leaves from the storm the other night. We also threw a little shelf attached to the wall with just some little shelf brackets, and we've been using this as a cutting propagation station because it gets some nice bright light in the morning and then shade like this in the afternoon. But this is where we're kind of doing all of our cuttings. We've got the creeping Jenny, we've got the Swiss cheese philodendron, the pink princess, some coleus, some mint, more syngonium rooting in here. So it's worked out well so far. Now that we're past all those cool evenings, this can work out pretty well. And our little baby mountain laurel that we were a little worried about originally, she is actually putting on a lot of new growth and she's kind of stabilized. We also gathered some pots around her to protect her because our lovely dogs wanted to keep walking through here. So I think with a little bit of the protection, the physical barrier around it, and just being able to stabilize, we used a bunch of compost and mixed that in with the soil, and I think we got our roots finally stabilized, but tons of new growth. So we are super happy and excited about this one because the mountain laurels in our area are evergreen, so it'll give some nice screening and privacy. The coral honeysuckle has also taken off now that it's got warm evenings as well. So we're hoping that this will take over this side of the pergola, similar to how the crossvine has taken over the other side of the shower. But once it gets up here, we'll get a little more sun. She's looking a little chlorotic in its leaves, so I do need to get her maybe some iron and some nitrogen, but it has put on a ton of growth this last month. And I know a lot of you guys asked about the coral honeysuckle and whether or not it's invasive. It's not a standard honeysuckle, it's a coral honeysuckle. It's got a pink tubular flower, really great for things like hummingbirds, and it is native to our general area of Texas. I believe it's native further east in Texas, but it is not an invasive one that a lot of you guys were worried about. And all the elephant ears are finally growing in as well. Again, those warm evenings that we finally got in. We were getting a lot of rain between the last video and this video too, so that's obviously really helped. Our rain tanks are super full right now, which is great, but these guys are filling in really nicely. Because we've been getting a lot of those rains lately, the frog fruit is thriving. What's really cool about the frog fruit though is we put it back here just as kind of a ground cover to prevent needing to do a whole bunch of mulching. She is taking over a little bit, but it's a ground cover that's really great as like a turf alternative, or in areas like this where you just need some fill. It can handle foot traffic, which is why it won't die back. It just kind of squishes, but it will pop right back up and continue thriving. And look at these cute little flowers. The bees love these, and butterflies love them too because they are a small pad. Butterflies and bees like any type of flower that's going to be a pad or kind of a broad area for them to land. The Greg's Mist flower has also really taken off, which is nice. This little guy was just a 4-inch container that we installed, and over the last about 4 or 5 weeks, with all the rain we were getting, it really took off. But now that it's warmed up, we are starting to see some of the blooms open up. Again, another really awesome butterfly plant to add to the garden. And because we're in peak warm weather right now, our lantanas are all going nuts, as you can see. This is another area of the garden that definitely got overplanted by someone, not saying who, but it was probably me. But as you can see, the lantanas are really filling up. So we've got the new gold lantana and then the native, what they call Texas lantana. And that's got it's kind of an orange, pink, and red kind of color or combination in there. But those guys look gorgeous. And again, another pad flower because the butterflies love them. My native milkweed is blooming. So in the process of this lantana growing, I couldn't remember what I had planted in here because I dug up some root system and I wasn't sure what it was. But it's the native milkweed, and she's coming back. There's 2 growth spikes in here. So once it's done blooming, I am gonna move this to a better protected location. But look at that flower, it's so freaking pretty. And then the lantana has also grown over top of our native verbena, the homestead or prairie verbena here, homestead verbena. It's got a cool purple pad flower, very similar to the lantana, but that poor thing is gonna get transplanted as well, because obviously she got overrun. Check out that flower though. Check out how cool that is. It's got the petals that go up and down. Great for the butterflies. This really is like a little butterfly garden, honestly, right here, because the lantana and the Russian sage and the Henry Duelborg salvias, they all have that pad flower. And then the Greg's, oh, there was a butterfly right there. There it goes. The Salvia Gregi also is really good for the butterflies, but we've got a hummingbird that loves visiting this salvia. All right, in this past month too, we also decided to widen this garden bed in front of the bamboo. We wanted a little bit more depth and something that was just gonna be a little bit more stable than the bamboo itself. We covered a lot of the bamboo questions in a video. You should definitely go and check that out if you've got any more. Let us know in the comments, I'd be happy to answer them. But Jake went through and tilled up all of this section. It's about 6 foot in front of the bamboo. And we took some of the paddle cactus, the spineless prickly pears, and we planted those in. So they're gonna kind of make like a little bit of a hedge moment there. And then we also transplanted in a bunch of other material like the rosemary and the drift rose here. And we're gonna slowly just kind of add to this bed with other cuttings and propagations, just so that honestly, we're having a little bit of fun with it. But we did pick up a couple of plants, and one of them is this butterfly bush. This guy likes at least 4 to 5 hours of sun in our area. It will get about 6 foot tall, but it gets these like 8 to 9 inch flower spikes, and this is kind of the lavender colored one. And then we also have the Mexican bird of paradise, which is gonna be more like a tree, and it's gonna have a big cluster of yellow flowers on it. And that guy can be like 8 to 12 foot tall, depending on how much it likes its space. And then this little chinkapin oak here was a little sapling that was given to us from, I think, the tree guys here in Austin, but she's thriving. She's doing really well. It's putting on a ton of growth. Last year I wasn't really sure it was gonna make it, but we did finally get it some irrigation, so it does have a little drip irrigation spike to it, and she's doing great. All right, so we saw the transplanted drift rose and the rosemary. Those plants actually came out of this space in the garden bed. This space is downhill from our outdoor shower, and so they were constantly getting a lot of excess water, which is great in like peak summer season. The downfall is they both don't like wet feet. So I was constantly fighting a fungal issue. 100% not the time of year to transplant those plants. But with the fungal issue, I was worried we were about to lose them. So we went ahead and transplanted them in peak summer heat, which is why they're not looking so hot, and we had to do some trimming. But in their place, my mom was splitting up her cannas, and so we took a few of her cannas and plopped those guys in this space because they don't mind the wet feet from the shower runoff. And then we also got a little 4-inch salvia gray guy that we added in, and this guy is going to be white, so we'll have the red at that end and the white at this end with some purples and oranges and blues in between. But these guys should handle the wet feet a lot better than the rose and rosemary. And the Vitex tree also bloomed like crazy in between these videos, but this guy goes bonkers with all of its blooms. It's kind of a cool blue, purple, lavenderish kind of color, but really gorgeous, stunning to see. The downfall with it, it doesn't really last long, but it will produce another couple sets of blooms, but nowhere near as much as that like first punch of blooms. But again, butterflies, bees, hummingbirds, love it. The bougainvillea is finally in full bloom. Also, again, likes the stress. I know I keep saying that, but the bougainvilleas like stress. That's what's going to help them bloom. I have not really done a lot of fertilizer with this guy this year, but they are probably, I would say like 75% of the blooms have already fallen off. We had a really bad rainstorm the other day that was kind of windy, and so this whole area was covered in bougainvillea blooms. We also have some new additions along the deck here. We installed 3 Italian cypress. These guys were in 3-gallon containers, I want to say, but we've installed these guys in such a way that they are going to anchor our pergola space for us. And in a future project, we're going to have a little bit of kind of an outdoor dining moment over here. And so this third one here will be anchoring that space and kind of helping direct traffic as you come off the deck here. My little baby japonica is finally growing out also. I did stick in some cuttings of the sweet potato vine in the purple heart in the base of the plant. But again, warm nights, finally got some warm weather with some actual sun. So all of these like subtropicals and tropicals are really taking off. And of course our natives like the lantana, like we saw, are all blooming like crazy, but the japonica is just now starting to bloom. And we did have one experiment that kind of failed. All of our little sedge that we put in these planters would have been really cool, I think, as a backdrop, but with how hot it got so quickly this summer, we kind of didn't keep up with the watering, so the poor babies did not do well. They didn't get enough water. They dry out too quick here. And with those late spring rains and the finally getting that warmth from the summer, the star jasmine has also grown a ton. You can see a lot of the growth here. We really actively weave these first few runners in and out of this. It does 2 things. It quickly trains it as to where we want it to go, but it also in the future, as more growth comes up, it kind of gives us little pockets to weave the plant into as it's filling out through the season. And we took another one of those canna bulbs and dropped those guys in the bed here. I think this might be a variegated one. I think it's like the tiger bloom or something. So it's gonna have that bright orange, whereas those guys over there of the cannas are gonna be the bright red. All right, in our entry courtyard is where we keep most of our potted tropical plants, and these guys really like it up here because of the shade of the large oak and that filtered light they get all day long. But now that it's finally warmed up, everything's really growing. So the Monstera is putting out a ton of new growth, which is really exciting because we were a little worried about her health. The Taniki is doing really well and finally filling out at the base. So that guy's gonna look really sharp. And then we've also added in 3 of these hanging planters off of the entry pergola with cuttings of our pothos ivy that we've been rooting. We put 2 or 3 cuttings in each one, so they're gonna look a little funny for their first few months of growth, but everything is at least starting to establish and get a root system going. And the idea would be kind of a curtain of vines hanging down here because the walkway's pretty narrow and we didn't want any more potted plants in the walkway. After cleaning up the syngonium last month, she's thriving again, as you can see. She's really filled out, a ton of new growth. I think there's like 3 varieties of syngonium in here. I am gonna have to definitely split them soon before they split this poor pot. The impatiens have been growing really well that we added as well. They've kind of gone through one bloom cycle already, and they're budding up for another bloom cycle. Of course, the caladium's thriving up here with that bright filtered light. We had a cutting that we rooted of the coleus from that propagation station, so we tossed her in here too. See how well that does. The purple oxalis is all looking really, really sharp. Gives a nice contrast with kind of the salmon red of the impatiens. And the root beer plants are doing really well up here too. And then we transplanted another on the back side here. So hopefully we get the height of the root beer plants across that back fence. So you get that nice kind of green backdrop from the entryway. Another little love story here is our fig ivy. Should say it's Jake's love story. She's not my love story, but Jake loves her so much. But she did start growing back and leafing out. We really thought we lost it completely. There's a ton of new growth, I would say, over the last like just 2 weeks alone, really, right? So it's gonna grow. The idea here is letting the fig ivy grow like on the fence, and then we've got our hue light fixture inside the fence here, so we'll kind of maintain it as like a lower level of evergreen backdrop here. But she is actually growing back, so we're giving her some time to kind of leaf out and get some growth, and then we'll really start pinning it off to the fence to attach to the fence and grow upward. At the entry here too, our entry pergola is finally starting to get covered by this cross vine. This is the same type of vine that we have out back on the pergola around the shower. So we're really excited to see it start filling in. I'm still questioning whether or not we're gonna get blooms out of this because it does get a lot of filtered light, but it does get a couple of hours of that afternoon sun, which is that more intense sun. So hopefully that can make up the difference. But it is starting to reach the top. As you can see, we need to kind of train her back up there. But it is probably put on 2 or 3 foot of growth in the last month. We've also been trying to baby this poor little silver pony's foot in here, and she keeps growing and dying back and growing and dying back. Again, not a ton of sun up here, so I think she's just kind of having a hard time. The other problem is our lovely cat, Tucker, likes to lay in here, and he's really not giving the silver pony's foot enough time to establish before he starts laying on it. And raccoons. I think we have raccoons too. All right, so when we started our garden tours, Jake was no we, it was all Jake. Jake took the lawnmower to cut down the Mexican petunia or the Ruellia and the Mexican honeysuckle that we have up front here. And they are easily like 3.5 foot, almost 4 foot up there where they get a little more sun already. So they're already filling in. They're gonna start their bloom cycle here pretty quick. Actually, the Mexican honeysuckle's got some blooms started that I can see from here already, but you can see how quickly these guys grow in. It's been what, only like 2 months really? And they've already grown back 2/3 their size. And in our mailbox planter, our yucca the twist leaf yucca has sent up a bloom spike and it has bloomed its full cycle. So I've got to get in there and get that stalk out. But we did add in some creeping germander, which is going to have a small purple flower, a gray Santolina, which is going to have a bright yellow kind of round little globe-like flower. There's some little stonecrop sedum up there doing really well. And then in the back, we've got a trailing lantana, the white trailing lantana that'll come off the backside. So these guys are doing okay so far. They're only not quite a full month old, I think. So we'll see where they're at in maybe another month or 2, but hopefully we'll see a lot more growth out of them soon. So as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you guys have any comments or ideas for anything in our garden, please let us know in the comments below. Otherwise, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel to show your support. And check out some of the extra links we've got in the description below for you.